I'm sorry, Rabbi, who had eye surgery?
What was that?
Who had eye surgery?
Oh,
Gene's having it
Gene.
later.
Gene Farber is having
Oh, wow.
cataract.
Refuah Sulema and
He says he's going to be okay. He'll be okay.
It's no big deal.
Her words were no big deal. So thank God today that it is a relatively a common procedure. So
Cataracts?
yeah,
Oh, I had them done. It's nothing to it.
there you go.
See?
Tommy had it done.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, so I had a question that was on the table last week. I think Hinda asked it about the 80-degree oven, which I had never heard of such a thing, but makes sense for dough. So I actually asked my Rebbe this question. I said, could you leave an oven on with such a setting? And assuming you can control for the fact that it will not kick on, let's say, once you open it up and it cools down and thus, it kick starts the flame to get back to 80 degrees, assuming we can control for that factor.
Sabbath mode does that.
And I thought you could put it in this 80-degree level on
I've
Sabbath
never
mode.
tried it, but I don't see why not.
Probably you could, yeah. Okay, so my question, I actually thought it made sense, but I was scared to say yes because it sounds crazy to me. But so he responded back and said, I don't see why it would be a problem. It's not hatmana, right? Hatmana is its own issue, but it's not hatmana. It's an oven. Hatmana again is when you surround it on all sides with some sort of extra or external cover. Good morning, Steve Smith. How are you? And there should be no issues with Bishul Shehiyah Chazar. We're not talking, as the Mishnah Berurah quoted, there's no shame tanur on this right now. At 80 degrees, we wouldn't call it an oven at this point.
It's like room temperature in the summer.
Yeah, so it's if you're ever in such a pinch that you would want to be able to heat something up to room temperature, essentially, in a quick manner from the refrigerator, which maybe I could see somebody doing, by the way. I could see somebody saying, I want to be able to get this to room temperature a little quicker. So that should be perfectly fine because it is set at it is below Yad Salet Esbo. Yad Salet Esbo estimates, between poskim, every one of them is going to be over 100 degrees and more from 120 and up. So 80 degrees is certainly going to be okay. So if you have such an oven, you have such a thing you want to try to do. Again, I'm not promising any miracles here. It's going to heat the food up. It's not. It's 80 degrees, but it takes the chill out of the food. So,
but it looks like cooking.
So, as the Mishnah Berurah said, though, at the end of last week's shir, and the Ramah also seems to indicate this, if you don't have Yad Salet Esbo, so Ein Alav Shem Tanur. It's not, we wouldn't call this situation an oven. And therefore, to go back to my example of why it is that my explanation of why it is that the rabbis were worried about this is that 1 week, I'll be like, okay, this is fine. I can reheat the food and it was fully cooked. But the next week, when I have a half-baked something, and I say, you know what, last week I put something on, it's fine, it's really okay, it's not a big deal, and I slide it in the oven, and it fully bakes it. Here, there is no potential isurim that can be violated. It's 80 degrees. I can't cook in such a situation. So if I put it in at 80 degrees, then there's a difference here because it's not considered, it's not a shame tanur, and therefore the situation is so different that there's no fear that then in a subsequent week I would then be like, whatever, I'll just put it in because that's what I always do. I always put the food in. Here, it's clearly at a very unusual temperature, enough so that you can get away with this one. But it's a good point, Steve. Maybe you could say, well, you could argue, maybe the rabbi said low plug, but that's not how the Ramah and the Mishnah Berurah as well understand this. You go back to the line in the Ramah, even the Machmirim, the strict ones in this situation, if it's Yad Salet Esbo, then it's Aser, according to the Machmirim, who wouldn't allow you to put anything back in the oven. That's if it's Yad Salet Esbo. Now, until more recent times, I am not aware of an oven that knows how to be less than Yad Salet Esbo. Again, you could say in a days before our types of ovens where they are controlled by a knob or a digital switch. Nonetheless, it probably was hard in those days too. And it was just like a coal fire. It's hard to make it that it's a very low heat like that. You probably can. I'm not denying you can, but it's not.
My benchmark goes back to the oven light that Hinda mentioned once,
Yeah.
and that you said it looks like cooking. And it was just the heat from the lamp in the oven
Yeah.
that was providing. So it was even below 80 degrees, certainly.
Yeah. So look, so long as when you open and close it, the light doesn't go on and off, and you can control for
Right,
that
right,
factor.
right.
There's no reason that you can't use that, because that's not Yad Lettuce, but let's be real. That's not 120 degrees.
Okay.
So to the extent that you want to be able to, to use such a feature, the door is now open for everyone to use such a feature on Shabbos. Okay, I found you a kula now.
And this applies to liquid as well.
That should apply to liquid as well. I don't see any reason why this would not apply to liquid. There's no potential here for cooking, right? It's 80 degrees. You want it to be a little warmer. You could have, I don't know if it'll be such a delicious soup at 80 degrees, but it's better than the cold soup. So, okay, good. Let's continue forward in our learning. We had read through Tzadi Gimel, if I'm not mistaken, in the Mishnah Berurah's comments. Excuse me. And we're up to the sentence in the Ramah that says "V'chol hadvarim she'asu." Second to last line on the page. Does everyone see that? In my edition, it's right in the middle of the line. V'chol hadvarim she'asu. Okay, the v'chol hadvarim she'asu la'asos midvarim elu. Okay. Again, if you don't like what I'm about to say, turn off the computer and pretend that there's a bad connection. I can't hear you. Anything that's not allowed from the things that we've mentioned, that we are not allowed to do as Jews. You are prohibited. This is black on white on the text here. You are prohibited to tell a non-Jew to do it. I don't know where this came from, that suddenly you could just tell a non-Jew to do everything and it's all good. It's not true. We'll see when we, again, Amir al-Nachri is in many ways sprinkled throughout Hilchot Shabbat. The giveaway is that there is a kula that exists in the Ramah when it comes to a mitzvah derabim, a mitzvah that relates to the public. The example that's given by the Mishnah Berurah is the Eruv wire goes down. If an Eruv wire goes down on Shabbos, you know what it can carry, you're allowed to ask the non-Jew explicitly in that case to fix it. But that is the exception, the mitzvah derabim. What I think confuses a lot of people is that you sometimes will see in shul this kula is utilized, and you'll see someone ask the staff to turn on the heat, which is a d'oraisa. It's too cold in the shul, and someone will go right over to the staff. That may be okay because we're talking about the mitzvah, the rabbim of the community being able to daven together as a tzibur. But one should not then take that example and transpose it to one's private home. And you'll say, what am I? I have a minion of people coming over for lunch. That's not what we're talking about with mitzvah the rabbim. Mitzvah the rabbim is when it's for the entire community. The entire community can benefit from the heat that goes on in the shul because it's too cold.
Rabbi, the
Yeah.
Eruv, isn't the rule that if the Eruv is fine, announced before Shabbos, if it goes down on Shabbos, you can assume it's okay?
There are two parts to an Eruv. One is one of the wires, one of these two rows HaPesach, these door frames, and the other one is the Eruv matzahs. If the wire goes down, the Eruv is no good immediately on spot. So it could be in the middle of Shabbos. What you're referring to is the leniency that once Shabbos starts, if the matzahs, let's say, the Eruv foods become consumed or destroyed or ruined in the midst of Shabbos, we do not need to replace them, and we assume that once Shabbos starts, even though now there's no more joint food that brings us together because it's been eaten or destroyed, you do not need to replace that or replenish that for that Shabbos. That is the rabbinic zera that it works. That is, again, the Eruv foods. That's when that principle applies that you're talking to. When you're talking about the wires, though, the wires go down, the Eruv is down immediately. So that's
I'm sorry. Would you make an announcement that the wires are down, or would you let it pass?
problem when
So,
people come with
practically
stones.
speaking, here in Scarsdale, we wouldn't, because the Eruv is so far from the edges from where I live, for example, that I would not know that it's down. And
Right.
you can assume on based on a chazaka that the last thing we knew is that it was up, and so we can assume that until we know otherwise, unless there's another chazaka that trumps it. So the reality is, on a practical level, and in our community, that will not happen. And I don't suggest you go looking for it either. You have no obligation to go looking for it. It's more sometimes when you have a smaller community, somebody notices maybe the wire is down because they're walking along the street where that Eruv border is. Then you're in the middle of a problem. Yes, if you're in the middle of carrying, my suggestion is you continue to carry until you get to where you're going. Don't stop. But we'll talk about that when we get to Hilchos Eruvin, about why it's better to just, once you're caught in the middle of it, that you should just continue carrying until placing it down right then and there actually doesn't help you. It may actually be worse.
Especially if it's a 1-year-old boy.
Especially if you're talking about a child. Though a child, you could already rely on a little bit of a kula of chayno se'asatmo. But okay. Lachain, back in the Ramah, Lachain asur lomar le'eino Yehudi, lachaim hakeder im nitztanin. You're not allowed to tell a non-Jew to heat up a pot of food if it has cooled down. Again, assuming that you can't do it. Meaning, probably we're talking about liquid here. V'im asa kain, if you do such a thing and you tell the non-Jewish person to do this for you, so asur la'ochlo, afilu tzonin. You're not allowed to eat it even cold. That's the rabbi's punishment for you trying to get around the rules. Omnam im lo nitztanen kol kach, if it hadn't cooled down all the way, shadayin ru'ui in lecha. So that, I mean, it was still. I would have been happy eating it. It wasn't piping hot, but it wasn't room temperature. I was still happy to eat this soup. Let's say, im chimemu oso ha'enam Yehudim. If the non-Jew in that scenario had heated up the food, mutarin lechol. It's not allowed to tell them to do that. But now, can I eat the food after the fact? And the answer is yes. Can I have the soup? Yes. Now, let's look at the Mishnah Berurah here. Tzadi Daled. Even if it's only asur midirabanan to do, again, in general. Let's say I can't do something on Shabbos only because it's a derabanan. I am not allowed to tell a non-Jew to do the Issa D'Rabbanan. Full stop. Can't tell them. Again, we'll be able to say in certain circumstances, let's say it's Oneg Shabbos is on the line, and it's already D'Rabbanan, and telling them to do something is a D'Rabbanan, so it's a D'Rabbanan on a D'Rabbanan, and it's mitzvah, mitzvah Oneg Shabbos. So maybe then it's okay. But the starting assumption should be it's not okay.
Just to clarify, we're talking about telling somebody to do something. We're
Yes.
not talking about if we told somebody the day before Shabbos, for example, if the heat goes off, come in and put it on and then leave. That's okay.
That's questionable, actually.
Okay.
That's questionable because you have set into motion an Amir al-Anocher from before Shabbos. We will discuss this case. Maybe not in the coming days, coming Shurim, but we will discuss that case. That is questionable whether you can set up Amir al-Anocher from before Shabbos.
I'll wait.
Yeah. So sorry, I told you. Don't do bad connection. Just log off. Okay. Okay. Tzadi hey lahachem hakadera to heat up the pot. Afilim lo yitna al gabe eshok al kira mamish. I tell them don't even put it on top of the kira or on top of the fire. Mamish right on top of it. Deshuv ein bazeh mishum iser chazara. Oh, then there's no iser chazara. I'm good to go. No chazara. I told them to put it on the side of it. So afal pikein aser. It's still not okay. Mishum iser bishul. Now here it's a unique situation. Here because we're talking about a liquid. If you could find a way to heat up a liquid without putting it on top of the fire or on top of the kira, but maybe I could put it next to it, or I could do a kadera al gabe kadera. No, if you're cooking food, you're cooking food. That is a separate issue than reheating food, and that's what's going on here. So mishum iser bishul kevan shenitz time since it cooled down completely, bishul is now back on the table for this liquid food. Again, clear from the context, we're talking about a liquid. Again, it talks about over there that it has to, if it has not completely cooled down, then reheating it is actually fine. The Magen Avram writes, nevertheless, and Ushari Achronim and other Achronim also add, maybe there, by letter of law, you actually, if it's not on the fire or on, itself, it's just on the tanur, then we'll allow it, to be eaten. You can't tell the non-Jew to do it, but after the fact, we won't prohibit the food. Because then there are yesh poskim shematirin afili Yisrael asos lechatchila. There are poskim who will allow this, who will allow such a thing to be done by a Jew lechatchila. Again, let me just find what's he citing here in my Gemara. So again, in Shin Yud Ches, Sif Tezvav, in the Ramah, this is where he talks about. Just find it. There's an opinion he quotes here. You don't have this in front of you unless you have Shin Yud Ches in front of you. That there is a lenient opinion that allows a Jew to put a liquid near a fire, even if it has cooled down. The Ramah says we only allow that if it hasn't been istanin legamre. So, for the matter of practical halacha, we don't allow reheating unless it's we allow reheating if it hasn't completely cooled down of a liquid. So here, since such an opinion exists, therefore we won't prohibit the food because we have what to rely upon, that maybe even a Jew could have done this. And therefore, telling a non-Jew to have done it, we shouldn't prohibit the food, even though we shouldn't have done it ourselves because we, practically speaking, don't follow this opinion. Okay, that's all he's trying to say here. The food would be okay. Now, let's go back to, let's continue forward. Sadibav, Filut Sonin, even if it cooled down, right, that I'm not allowed to reheat, I'm not allowed to put this food near the fire because it may actually, right, I can't even eat the food, I can't even eat the food cold if I ask them to reheat it improperly, the non-Jew. Even if I don't benefit from the non-Jew's balacha, I don't benefit. What do you mean? It's cooled down again. He heated it up, but it cooled down. So I don't benefit from anything that he did. I did ask him to do it. And then I got no benefit from it. I had cooled down again. So the rabbi said, no, sorry, can't eat it till after Shabbos. You have to wait until after Yom Tov in the amount of time that it would have taken for the non-Jew to do the malacha after Shabbos. Okay, or the time it would take me to do the malacha. So therefore, there's no benefit potentially that could derive from what could happen on Shabbos, because we wait the time after Shabbos that it would take to do the action that was done on Shabbos. Why do we have to make you wait? Because he did this malacha based on my command. If the non-Jew decides on their own, they discern the situation, and they say, "I want to be nice to this person, to my Jewish neighbor," and they go ahead without asking me or without any of my prodding or any of my hinting, because hinting too is a problem, by the way. Sorry, I told you, all these things are going to go out the door. Shari le'echol tzonin. Then I can eat the food cold. You're like, wait a minute, why can't I eat it hot? I didn't ask them to do it for me. So hold on, let's finish this. Comment. He's not going to talk about it, but let's finish the comment. Since I didn't benefit from the malacha at all, and I didn't want the malacha done, I didn't ask for the malacha to be done. who am I? Why should it be prohibited for a Jew once it's cooled down again? Mihu im Yisrael ro'ehu. But if I see him doing what he's doing, I see him, he's eating up my food. Nice guy, but I have to tell him, please don't do that, actually. I went to Rabbi Klinger Shir, you're making it worse. You're actually making it worse for me. Don't touch my food. Yeah. So why is it that if he does this on his own, the non-Jew, why is it that I can't actually take advantage of this? And the reality is that the rule is that I am not allowed to benefit. If I can't do it, I'm not allowed to benefit from a non-Jew doing it. And even if they don't ask me, at the end of the day, I benefited from a malacha that was done on my behalf.
Even if he did it himself?
What was that?
Even if he did it himself and then also...
That's going to be the difference here. If the non-Jew was doing, let's say the non-Jew said, I want some soup also. So they're like Cosmo Kramer, right? They just come in like Jerry Seinfeld, right? They come right into your apartment. They go into your refrigerator and start, they see what's yours is mine. So they decide, okay, I'm just going to reheat the soup. And they start reheating the soup because they want some soup. Now I have hot soup that's sitting around. That will be different than if they are doing this, if they're doing it simply for my behalf, on my behalf. They want to benefit me. That is going to be problematic. If they're doing it for themselves, it's one thing. That's why if sometimes I'm here in the library lights are closed, and I need a sefer for some Dvar Torah, some drasha, some shir I'm giving on Shabbos, whether it's in the morning or at Shalosh Shudas. And Andre used to come in Zechron Levrach all the time, and he would just be there. And should I turn the light on? I said, no, don't turn on the light, Andre. Don't turn on the light. He's not doing it for himself. If let's say that they decide, the lights were off at 3 p.m, and then at 4 p.m, one of the custodial staff here decides, I'm going to turn it on because they want to be able to sit in the room and to take benefit from the light. So then that's going to be okay if I then subsequently walk into the room.
So why wouldn't you have told Andre, bring a book next time?
A book, right? Correct, which he liked reading also. So that's correct. So all he needs to do is bring a book. Yes. So once you have the Gemara example is ner le'echad ner lamea, right? A light for one is a light for 100, right? So once they're turning it on for themselves, so okay, so others can benefit too. But if they're just simply turning it on because they see that I'm struggling, that I need light, and they kind of pass by in the hallway and they flip it on, that is not going to be a situation where we can benefit from the light. Again, more to come on this topic as we continue to go through. Much of what we focused on earlier in Hilchot Shabbat about Amir L'Nachri had to do with business related transactions and just, can I have a business? How do I relate within my own business to a non-Jewish person, or can I have them do can they send my FedEx, over Shabbos and things like that. So the things that happen more on Shabbos, that is yet to be covered in the laws in Hilchot Shabbat.
If the person asks your permission, do you mind if I make a pot of coffee?
The non-Jewish person, I'm saying like for you though.
Yeah, no. He just said
For themselves.
Do you mind? He doesn't say. He just says, do you mind if I put up a pot of coffee?
Yeah, then look, I think if you could presume that they're going to, unless that was code word. See, code is actually worse. If that's code word for I'm making it for you, then that's actually a problem. If I really have a generally no knowledge of why they made this coffee, do they make it for themselves or not, then that may be a permissible situation. So we will come across these situations as we go through Hilchot Shabbos. Okay, Tzadi Zayin Shadayin Ru'in Lechol. It is still fitting to eat. Eating if the soup, let's say, didn't cool down all the way, and then the non-Jew decided to put it on the fire and reheat it all the way, then I could. That wasn't the right thing, or let's say I told them to do that. That was not the right thing. I should not have told them to do that. But that's now. Can I eat it? The answer is yes, because it's still. I could have still eaten it when they put it on the fire at that point. Even though I benefit from the. And here in my edition, it says here, Kavanaso mehachimun, which probably makes sense. The word should have been chimun here. Since I benefit from the reheating that takes place, share b'diavad. Even though I benefited from the reheating, share b'diavad, after the fact it is permissible, I could have eaten it without the heat. this extra heat. And since it was possible, I technically didn't fully benefit from the malacha that happened here, and therefore I can eat it on Shabbos. Now, even if the non-Jew puts it right over the fire based on my command, nevertheless, after the fact, we don't prohibit this food to be consumed on Shabbos. Okay, tzadiches, mutarin lechol. That in this situation, if it hasn't cooled down all the way, it's permissible to eat it. If the non-Jew heats it up, even if the non-Jew reheats the cooked dish and the meat together, sorry, and the tavshil, the cooked dish that was with it, let's say the soup or something like that, was not from the beginning fitting to be eaten because it was so cold. So that one was cold. Nevertheless, I should not be able to prohibit the meat. So let's say the meat was kind of warm, and then I put it, the non-Jewish person put it all together. So let's say I had rice and I had meat. The rice, you guys, you could eat rice cold. Think of a dish here that is really not so delicious when it's cold, but it's something that's liquid. Let's say I have meat separate from the soup, and then I put the non-Jewish person puts them together. Let's say I have knedlich, and I have that's the example. I have knedlich, that's my basar here, with meat inside of it. What's that called? Knedlich with basar inside of it. So there's a name for that, right? Isn't there a special name for knedlich with meat inside of it? It's bad for your health, probably.
I'm thinking about kreplach, which is
that's the meat with the meat. Yeah, let's go with kreplach then. Kreplach separate, and I have the liquid for the soup. The non-Jewish person decides I'm going to put the kreplach into the soup and reheat the whole thing. But the kreplach were a little bit hot on their own, and the soup was cold. But now we've made a mishmash of them. So here he's saying, even if you did this, right? Even if the non-Jewish person heated it up as such, where the tavshil, the soup was cold, that would have not been really edible, without heating it up at all. Nevertheless, we won't prohibit the meat. The kreplach were kind of warm, and now they're warmer, but the soup, I can't eat. But since the kreplach were edible when they were not yet fully cooled down, therefore they should be permissible to eat, even though they probably have absorption now of the soup. That far, we're not going to go nuts. And I think maybe by the way, here at the end, he's even saying that meat in and of itself, you can eat meat room temperature. People do that. I think he's even saying here, even if the meat, I think he doesn't even say that the meat was kind of warm. I think he's saying that the meat can be eaten cold in an enjoyable way. Soup is not something unless it's a cold soup. Soup is not enjoyable at room temperature at all. I think I can say that based on life experience.
That's your life experience.
Yeah, you trying cold soup.
Somebody else may like it.
Yeah,
I don't like cold pizza. My kids like cold pizza.
Yeah, I could go.
This is a tremendous cooler.
Yeah. Cold pizza I can go with. That I can understand. The cold soup, a cold chicken soup is what are you doing?
Vegetable soup is fine. We eat it all the time.
Cold.
Yeah.
So
Vegetable soup.
So right. So again, think of your scenario here where it was not inedible. Obviously, you can eat it, but it's really not the way it's supposed to be consumed. But meat, I guess some meats are meant to be eaten cold. I don't know, but I like my example better of the kreplach situation, where even if you combine them, the kreplach don't get mixed in with the other food in terms of the isser. Let's keep going just a little bit longer here. Back up on top in the Ramah. Okay, now this is where requires a little bit. I'm going to go a little slower here, and I think requires a little bit of understanding about the ancient. Not ancient, but the way that in a world of 500 years ago, or actually not that long ago, how did one heat up their house? Right? Well, before there was a heating, You had your internal heating system in your house. So you had a fireplace, maybe, right? And your fireplace, so probably heated up a certain, to a certain amount of square feet. It would heat up. But the question is, how did you get, how do you get warm in the winter? If you didn't have a fireplace, also, what did you do? So just keep that in mind as we read the next part here. He says here, back in the Ramah, Lachain nohagim sheha'enam Yehudim motziin kederos hamin hatanurim shematminim bahem umoshivim otam eitzel tanur beis hachoref o alav uma'averes hashivcha achar kach hatanur hahu v'al yedei zeh kederos chozrim min yirtachim v'al yedei Yisrael aser b'kihai gavna. Okay, now I'm going to need your help a little bit here. He says here, therefore, the practice, there was a practice in place, I guess, in Krakow back in the days of the Ramah, or he cites the Trumas Hadeshen, who lived in Austria in the 1500s, in the 15th century. The Trumas Hadeshen writes, therefore, there was a practice that non-Jews would take out pots from the ovens, shemat minim bahem, where they were sort of hidden. They were in there. I don't know if it was actual hatmana that was happening here, or they were just sort of, there were pots in the oven. Umoshivin osam, and they would return them eitzel tanur beis hachoref, into the tanur of the beis hachoref. The beis hachoref was a room that was used as in the winter. It was a room where there was an oven that would heat up the space. So don't think of this as necessarily the food oven. This was an oven to heat up the house.
Wood burning stove type?
Yeah, something like that, like a wood burning stove, like you have here. It's for the heat. It's beis hachoref, right? Choref means winter. This was the beis hachoref. So in order to keep things warm, or to go into a place that was warm, this was the beis hachoref. There was a tanur in there. So you would put an eitzel, eitzel tanur beis hachoref. I don't know if they would put it in it or they would put it near it. Eitzel means near something. O alav, or on top of this tanur beis hachoref. Umaveres hashivcha, and then the shivcha, the non-Jewish maidservant, would light the fire afterwards. Umaveres hashivcha achar kach hatanur hahu, of this oven. Now, what I need help with is, what is this oven? Is it the tanur beis hachoref, or was it the original tanur that they were heating up the food? Right? Umaveres hashivcha achar kach hatanur hahu v'al yedei zeh hakaderos chozim min yirtachim. To me, it sounds like it's a tanur beis hachoref, and it's on top of the tanur beis hachoref. And this was, this stuff was hot, but the heat is dissipating probably in this oven where the food was cooking. The tanur beis hachoref, I'm giving you a heads up, was on basically all Shabbos, and it was basically being run by a non-Jew. And the reason was because if you ever have been in Krakow in the winter, and I have not been, but my reports are that it's not so warm in the winter in Krakow. And in order, and there's a principle called kol chole eitzel hakor, that everybody is a chole, everyone is already a chole, meaning a chole she'ein bo sakana, when it comes to the cold. And there is a law that when a person is a chole she'ein bo sakana, not in danger, I am not feeling well, then I am allowed to ask a non-Jew to violate D'Rabbanans and maybe even D'Oraises on my behalf, which is different than what we talked about, the baseline halacha. And if you say that everybody in the wintertime in Europe is a chola when it comes to the cold, because if you don't heat up your home, you will be very, very, very cold. And perhaps actually the point where it may actually be a danger, how cold it could get without any kind of heating system. Then what you're saying is that when it comes to heating my house, a non-Jew can consistently and always reheat can continuously heat up this tanur in order that there is heat in my house. Now, I don't think that their houses, let's be real here, even with this heating system, I don't think that their houses we're suddenly a toasty 72 degrees in the winter in Krakow. But what it was is that it took away the probably the chill out of the house, and thus allowed it to be a situation where it was livable and you weren't in a continuous state of discomfort from the heat. Sorry, Tommy, I know you wanted to jump in a moment ago.
So that's the loophole to ask a non-Jew to set my thermostat or turn it on or change the temperature on it.
Perhaps, though I would argue if your heater is already on and it's on 60, let's say it's at 68, which is chilly, and you want it really to be at 71, I'm not sure that that's a situation where we could apply the principle of akol choli eitz al atzina, that everyone is a chola with regards to the cold, because it's not really a situation of tzina here. What we're talking about here in this situation is if these things weren't continuously being heated, the heat would go off 100%, and thus the temperature in your house will, actually pretty rapidly decline. The heat rises and dissipates out very quickly, as opposed to the other way. Air conditioning, you turn an air conditioner on, it can take a while to get the house cool if it's very, very, very hot. So I don't know that we would apply that principle there. When we get to that principle, which will be mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch and Ramah, I will try to see what some of the commentaries have to say about that. But I'm not sure that situation would qualify. If your heat, this has happened. If, let's say, your heat kicked off for some reason, something went, tripped your system, and now your heat is totally off, that I would say for sure you can ask your non-Jewish neighbor to please come in. Can you, this happened to me one time. Very uncomfortable. It was actually one of the coldest nights in the winter. It didn't happen on Shabbos, and there was water that got into the system, and there was an automatic. It automatically shut off to protect the system in order that the things don't get ruined. I didn't know what. I'm not an expert. I couldn't diagnose it at the time. All I knew was suddenly it was getting very cold in the house, even though it said heat on, and the temperature was dropping. And it was here in Scarsdale, and I called Andre. They couldn't get anybody out that night. It was freezing that night. I actually had to get 2 space heaters, one for my kids' rooms, just to take the chill out of the air. And they came the next day to fix it. If in theory that had happened on Shabbos day, I would have told Andre right on the spot, and it was a high of 29 degrees, low in the teens. I would have said absolutely, please bring somebody out immediately, even if it's Saturday, to fix the heating system. And I'll go as far as to say, by the way, I heard in the Young Israel of Woodmere, it's on YouTube. It's okay. They did the right thing. The Young Israel of Woodmere on Yom Kippur this year, I heard the air conditioning system completely at Kol Nidre completely was broken, and they had to call a repairman for Yom Kippur for Yom Kippur to fix it in the morning. I heard that around 10:30 the air conditioning kicked in, and people were worried they were going to drop dead from the heat on Yom Kippur. They're fasting anyway, so that's not the heating system, but similar idea of when you have a situation where people are going to be cholim, it's Yom Kippur, and they're going to be people who are going to feel very sick if we don't fix the air conditioning because they're going to overheat. If you remember, if you get 1,000 people, like that's the main shul, all together, it can get very hot in there. So, you have to do what you have to do to avoid predictable chola situations.
Yeah, but it's also a tzibur situation in that case.
It's a what situation? Tzibur, correct. You also have the heter of the tzibur. Very good, excellent. So that's like better. But in your own personal home, if your heating goes out on Shabbos, you should ask a non-Jew, and it's a very cold day. You I think can go over to a neighbor. I really believe this, 100%. You can go over to a neighbor and ask them to call the heating people for you.
And if it's a very hot day and your heating system and your air conditioning system goes off?
If we are, we will. I have to double check. Do we say hakol chole eitzel hachol? I certainly feel that way on a personal level. I hate the heat, the extreme heat. I have to look what was in the farm, because that's a scenario, see, Steve, that they encountered. There was no air conditioning. In the winter, at least they could heat things up, but there was no way that they could cool things down in the summer. So we have to look what they say. Was such a principle applied where they could bring some? I don't even know what they would do 200 years ago to try to cool down. There's nothing. Ice. Maybe bring some ice. To the cinema, but you could bring ice. There's no problem with that. I can tell you that right now. So I don't know. Are we?
Well, yeah, if the ice was beyond the Eruv.
The ice was beyond the Eruv. Oh, that's your test case. Ice was beyond the Eruv. Could you ask the non-Jew to bring the ice into the Eruv?
No, they stored ice, big blocks of ice.
Right.
And if it was beyond the Eruv.
If it was beyond the Eruv, yeah. So that's a good question. So I don't know.
And somebody would fan it.
This principle certainly applies with regards to heat. We will cover that concept as we get through the Hilchot Shabbat, but I don't know if it applies to in the flip case with the air conditioning. It's a good question. I need to find out. You're certainly not the first person to ask this question, I'm sure, about if your air conditioning breaks on Shabbos. Can you have somebody come in and turn on the fans in your house, for example? Yeah, that's a good question. All right, we're going to pause here, and that scenario, by the way, the last part of that sentence I didn't finish translating was the pots and the food would sort of get back to a boil because they were near these ovens, the heater ovens. But a Jew could not do such a thing in any manner. That was what the Trumas Hadeshin said. So we'll see why there's a difference here. Why couldn't a Jew do this? If the non-Jew could do it, why can't a non-Jew do it? So we will cover that next time. We are uber close to the end of this simon. I'm going to say probably maybe 2 weeks left, of material here, and then we will have finished this topic. Though we will talk about other cooking-related issues in the next simon as well. So we'll pause here and have a great day. And
Beautiful. Yasher Koach, Rabbi.
Thank you.